Well, good morning. Tuesday morning. Here's the question. What have you learned about yourself since being quarantined? Good question. We're different. We may not realize it, but when you begin to contemplate, what have we learned about ourselves since being under quarantine? I stumbled across this. Some parents, this is what parents have observed during this time of quarantine. These are funny. Here's a guy, his name is Simon Holland. He says, so we don't go to restaurants. Kids aren't signed up for anything. And we're just staying home for spring break. Sounds like my childhood. Here's a mom who writes, cutting your toddler sandwich the wrong way is a mistake you don't make more than once. Boy, there's some profound truth to that. Here's somebody who says, Dad on my feet. He says this, today my 5-year-old is wearing a t-shirt that says genius. Ha, joke's on him. He put it on backwards. Here's a mom who calls herself professional worrier. I miss going to a restaurant and paying $5.99 for macaroni and cheese for my kid to take 2 bites of it. And then finally, here's one called Snarky Mommy. She writes, we've been trying to do more family dinners lately, and it's been nice to have the quality time together until my 11-year-old says, how long is this going to take? Boy, any parent can relate to that, can't they? Well, this week we've been looking at the first 5 recorded stories where Jesus reveals that he is risen. So this morning I want to look at Mark chapter 16, verses 1 through 8. Look at verse 1 in chapter 16. It says, and when the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome bought spices that they might come and anoint Jesus. Well, the fact that they came to anoint his dead body, they didn't expect Jesus to rise. Even though in Mark, it recorded 3 times that Jesus said in 8:31 and 9:31 and 10:34 that he would rise again. Now in verses 2 through 3, it was shortly after sunrise. So let's not knock these women. They were up early in the morning. They were headed to the tomb. They were worrying, they were talking back and forth about how are we going to remove the stone. They had seen the stone rolled over the entrance of the stone rolled over the entrance of the tomb. They had seen that in Mark chapter 15, verse 47. And so they're wondering, how are we going to remove the stone? It's a 2-ton stone. Pick it up in verse 4 and 5. And looking up, they saw that the stone had been rolled away. So they came upon the tomb. Stone is rolled away, although it was extremely large. Verse 5, and entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting at the right, wearing a white robe, and they were amazed. They were terrified. 2-ton stone, well, that worry's alleviated, but all of a sudden their attention is grabbed by something else. Here's a young man. We know him to be an angel. That'll be revealed later. He's dressed in this heavenly splendor, this white robe. And it says amazed, but it literally means they were highly distressed by the situation. They're at the tomb, stone rolled away, no Jesus, and here's this angel. You'd be amazed too. Look at verse 6. And again, true to form, this angel said to them, do not be amazed. In other words, don't be terrified. Don't be troubled. You're looking for Jesus, the Nazarene. He's been crucified. But remember, he's been risen. He is not here. Behold, here's the place where you laid him. Saying, don't be alarmed. He's risen. He's calling them to understand. Don't you remember the tomb is empty? He said it would be empty. Now look at verses 7 and 8. He says, but go, tell the disciples. And then he mentions one of the disciples. He says, and Peter. I'll talk about why he singled Peter out here in a second. He's going before you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he said to you. And then verse 8, and he went out and fled from the tomb. And they went out and fled from the tomb. And they were trembling and with astonishment. And they were gripped by this fear. And they said nothing to anyone and they were afraid. So over and over and over again, it says they're afraid, they're terrified, they're distraught, even though the angel has just said, don't be alarmed. Again, the angel says, Jesus is going on to Galilee. That's where he's going to meet the disciples. Now, he mentions Peter in here. Why did he mention Peter? Well, I think the reason that he mentioned Peter, that he singled him out, is because Peter had just denied knowing Jesus 3 times. And I think Jesus wants to get that event behind Peter very soon. Jesus wants to get him beyond that. But notice the women are still very afraid. You know, interesting that, again, he appears to women first. Now, in that culture, women were not allowed to be witnesses in a Jewish court. Women were not allowed to be witnesses in a Roman court. And yet Jesus wasn't afraid to make them the first witnesses to the greatest spectacle in human history. They were the first witnesses to an empty tomb. But yet they were anxious. They were afraid. Their minds were racing. Here's my observation. I think Jesus is in the process of alleviating his followers' anxiety. Julie and I this weekend were listening to a fellow by the name of Andy Crouch. He's one of those really uber smart, really insightful apologist, believer, follower of Jesus Christ. He said this about anxiety. Now mark this well. He said, anxiety is imagining the future without Jesus in it. Anxiety is imagining the future without Jesus in it. You know, you think about the core of your worries. Oh no, the coronavirus. Oh no, I'm going to lose this. Oh no, I'm not going to have enough of this. Oh no, I'm losing my money. I lost my job. Well, that's worrying about a future where Jesus isn't in it. But even if those things happen, Jesus is our sustenance. Jesus is our living water. Jesus is the one who is our source of nutrition and life and health and breadth and eternity. And so I think what Jesus is doing, he's building the case for, hey, don't be afraid. I am in your future. Because he's going to say here before long, lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the age. So when you consider that, why be anxious? Your anxiety is built around a world where Jesus isn't in it. And Jesus is saying to us, hey, I am in your future. So here's the question. What are you anxious about? Be vulnerable. Take it to the Lord. Parents, lead out on this because we're all anxious about something. And God wants us to verbalize it to one another and then at the same time to say, hey, these things that I'm anxious about, hey, why should I be anxious? Turn them over to Jesus because Jesus is in your future. He's the one and the only one that can alleviate your anxiety. Have a great Tuesday. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow.